When winter arrived without warning. Narrate slowly, warmly, and peacefully. The tone should feel sleepy, emotional, and deeply immersive. Every sentence should paint soft winter imagery for the listener. Use gentle packing with long descriptive paragraphs. Add natural pauses between thoughts. Focus on atmosphere, daily life, survival, candlelight, snow, silence, and emotional comfort. The storytelling style should feel like a calm bedtime documentary, made for adults trying to sleep. In the early years of old America, long before highways stretched across the country, before glowing cities filled the night sky, and before electric lights turned darkness into day, winter arrived quietly. There were no weather forecasts warning families about incoming snowstorms. No phones buzzing with alerts. No heated cars waiting outside warm homes. People simply looked toward the sky. And somehow they knew. The air itself began to change first. During late autumn, cold wind slowly drifted across empty farm fields and sleepy dirt roads. Trees that once danced proudly in golden sunlight became thin and silent beneath gray clouds. Leaves disappeared one by one, carried away by icy winds moving down from distant northern forests. Small American towns became quieter during these days. Farmers woke before sunrise and stepped outside into freezing darkness. Their boots pressed softly into hard ground touched by early frost. Horses breathed clouds of white mist into the cold morning air, while wooden fences creaked gently beneath the weight of gathering ice. Everywhere, families hurried to prepare. Because winter in old America was not simply a season. It was a challenge, a test of patience, a test of survival. Inside tiny wooden homes, mothers spent long hours preserving food that would need to last through the coming months. Apples were dried carefully beside weak autumn sunlight. Herbs hung from ceiling beams near fireplaces. Potatoes were stored beneath the earth where freezing temperatures could not reach them. Nothing could be wasted. Not flour. Not candles. Not firewood. Not time. Children carried heavy stacks of wood into small cabins, while cold wind slipped through gaps in wooden walls. Their cheeks turned red from the freezing air, but they continued working quietly beside parents and grandparents who understood exactly how difficult winter could become. By late afternoon, smoke rose slowly from chimney tops across entire villages. That smoke meant warmth. It meant soup cooking slowly over open fires. It meant safety. At night, families gathered together beneath candlelight while darkness swallowed the world outside. The flame from a single candle became precious during winter evenings. Its soft, golden glow flickered across wooden walls while icy wind whispered against frozen windows. Beyond those windows, snow began to fall. Slowly at first. Softly. Almost silently. Tiny white flakes drifted through the darkness and settled across rooftops, fences, and empty roads. Horses resting in barns shifted quietly in the cold while distant church bells echoed gently through snowy air. Then morning arrived, and the world had changed completely. The roads disappeared beneath deep white snow. Trees stood frozen like silent statues beneath pale skis. Rivers moved slowly beneath growing sheets of ice, while smoke continued rising from lonely cabins scattered across the frozen countryside. For many families, this was the beginning of months spent indoors together. Winter trapped people inside their homes for long periods of time. Travel became dangerous. Snowstorms could arrive suddenly during the night and bury entire roads before sunrise. Some storms lasted for days, sometimes weeks. During the harshest winters, families pushed furniture against doors to stop freezing wind from entering tiny homes. Thick blankets covered windows. Candles burned from morning until night while firewood slowly disappeared piece by piece inside glowing fireplaces. Yet despite the hardship, winter also created strange moments of peace. Without machines, without engines, and without electricity, snow transformed the world into silence. A deep silence, the kind modern life rarely experiences anymore. People could hear the crackling of firewood clearly. They could hear clocks ticking softly across quiet rooms. They could hear snow brushing gently against rooftops late at night, while entire villages slept beneath moonlit skis. Time itself seemed slower during winter. Evenings lasted forever. Families sat together beside warm fires after long days of work. Grandparents told old stories while children listened beneath wool blankets. Some repaired clothing by candlelight. Others carved wood quietly beside glowing embers. And outside, snow continued falling endlessly across the sleeping land. The forests became beautiful during these months. Tall pine trees stood covered in thick white snow, while frozen lakes reflected pale winter moonlight beneath endless stars. Foxes moved silently through deep drifts, searching for food. Owls watched from icy branches above empty roads where travelers rarely passed anymore. Nature itself seemed asleep. Yet life continued quietly inside small homes scattered across America. For poor families, winter could feel frightening. Food supplies sometimes became dangerously low before spring arrived. Illness spread easily through cold villages where medicine remained limited. Some families lost livestock during blizzards. Others became trapped far from nearby towns after heavy snow blocked every road. Still, people endured. They adapted to winter slowly, over generations. Warm soup became more than food. It became comfort. A glowing fireplace became more than heat. It became hope. And perhaps that is why old winter traditions still feel magical today. Because they remind people of something simple. Something modern life often forgets. The quiet beauty of slowing down. The comfort of warmth during darkness. The peace of sitting safely beside a fire while snow falls endlessly outside. In old America, winter forced people to live differently, to move slower, to speak softer, to stay closer together. And during the longest nights of the year, when cold wind moved across frozen towns and candlelight flickered gently against wooden walls, families discovered small moments of peace hidden inside the heart of winter itself. The snow continued falling quietly through the night, covering roads, covering rooftops, covering the silent world in white. And inside tiny cabins glowing softly beneath the storm, America slept beside the fire. The secret warmth of old fireplaces. Narrate slowly and gently. Use peaceful, descriptive language designed for sleep and relaxation. The packing should feel calm like falling snow during a winter night. Focus heavily on warmth, candlelight, crackling fire sounds, old wooden homes, emotional comfort, and quiet family life during winter in early America. During the long winters of old America, nothing inside a home mattered more than the fireplace. Before electricity, before central heating, and long before modern furnaces filled houses with warmth at the touch of a button, the fireplace stood at the very center of daily life. It was not decoration. It was survival. Entire families depended upon its steady heat during freezing winter nights when snowstorms buried roads. Frozen wind shook wooden walls, and darkness arrived early across the silent countryside. In many homes, the fireplace never truly stopped burning during winter. Day and night, someone carefully watched the flames. A dying fire during January could mean unbearable cold before morning arrived. So families protected the fire almost like a living thing. They fed it patiently with chopped oak, pine, maple, and cedar wood stacked carefully outside beneath layers of snow. Children often spent hours carrying firewood indoors, while icy wind slipped beneath cabin doors and tiny snowflakes melted slowly against warm floors. Inside small wooden homes, the air smelled of smoke, soup, melted snow, and burning timber. It became the scent of winter itself. The fireplace gave more than warmth. It gave comfort to tired hands after long days spent outside in freezing weather. Farmers returned home with boots covered in snow and fingers stiff from cold winds sweeping across empty fields. Mothers warmed pots of stew over glowing embers, while grandparents rested quietly in rocking chairs beside the firelight. At night, orange flames danced slowly across wooden walls, while shadows moved softly through quiet rooms. The sound of crackling wood became part of everyday life. A peaceful rhythm, repeating hour after hour during the longest months of winter. Sometimes storms arrived suddenly after sunset. Dark clouds covered the sky, while fierce wind swept across villages and isolated farms hidden beneath endless snow. Outside, trees bent beneath icy gusts while loose snow drifted against windows and doors. But inside the cabin, the fireplace continued glowing. Safe, warm, steady. Children often gathered closest to the fire. They stretched cold hands toward the heat while thick wool blankets wrapped around their shoulders. Wet boots dried slowly beside glowing embers, while socks hung from wooden chairs near the flames. Some children listened quietly as grandparents told stories about earlier winters even colder than this one. Stories about frozen rivers, about lonely travelers trapped by snowstorms, about wolves heard howling deep within dark forests during the night. The firelight made every story feel larger somehow, more magical, more alive. During especially cold evenings, families cooked directly over the fireplace using heavy iron pots hanging above open flames. Soup simmered slowly for hours, while the smell of onions, potatoes, herbs, and salted meat filled tiny homes with warmth. Simple meals tasted better during winter. Perhaps because survival made people grateful for every bite. Fresh bread baked beside the fire became one of winter's greatest comforts. The smell drifted gently through small cabins, while snow fell endlessly beyond frozen windows. In those moments, the world outside seemed very far away. Only the warmth inside mattered. Only the fire. In many homes, candlelight and firelight were the only sources of brightness after sunset. Darkness covered entire towns during winter evenings. Roads disappeared beneath black skis, while snow reflected pale moonlight across empty villages. Inside cabins, however, fireplaces created small islands of golden light. Families sat close together during these hours. Some repaired clothing quietly by hand. Others carved wooden tools, wrote letters, or simply rested after exhausting days of labor. The slow ticking of clocks mixed softly with the sound of burning wood while icy wind whispered outside. There were no televisions, no glowing screens, no endless noise. Winter evenings forced people to slow down, to sit quietly, to think, to rest. Sometimes silence filled the room completely, except for the crackle of fire and distant wind moving across snowy fields. And strangely, those quiet moments became precious. Modern life rarely experiences such silence anymore. But during old American winters, silence surrounded everything. Snow absorbed sound from the world outside. Horses moved quietly through frozen streets. Church bells echoed softly across sleeping towns, while chimney smoke rose slowly into gray winter skis. The fireplace became the emotional heart of the home during those long, cold months. Children often fell asleep beside its warmth, while storms raged outside through the darkness. Parents watched the flames late into the night after everyone else rested peacefully beneath thick blankets. They worried about food supplies, about firewood lasting until spring, about surviving another difficult winter. Still, the fire gave hope. As long as it burned, the family remained safe. Many early American homes were built small partly because smaller rooms stayed warmer during winter. Families lived closely together beside the fireplace for months at a time. Privacy barely existed during those years. Yet winter also created closeness. People spoke more softly beside firelight. They listened carefully to one another. They shared stories, meals, fears, and warmth together beneath the same roof, while snowstorms buried the outside world in silence. On especially cold nights, frost formed across the inside edges of cabin windows despite the heat from the fire. Ice patterns stretched slowly across glass like frozen flowers glowing beneath candlelight. Children sometimes traced shapes across the frost, while watching snow drift through the darkness outside. Beyond the cabin walls, winter forests stood frozen beneath moonlit skis. Tall pine trees carried heavy snow across their branches, while frozen rivers slept silently beneath thick ice. Animals searched quietly for shelter in the cold wilderness, surrounding isolated farms and villages. But inside the home, firelight continued dancing gently. Warm soup simmered slowly. Blankets remained soft beside the hearth, and the world felt peaceful for a little while. In many ways, the fireplace became more than an object. It became a symbol of warmth during hardship, a symbol of family during loneliness, a symbol of safety during long winter darkness. Even today, thousands of people still feel comfort while watching a fire burn quietly on cold nights. Perhaps because somewhere deep in human memory, fire still reminds us of survival, of rest, of togetherness, of winter evenings spent safely indoors, while snow falls endlessly beyond the windows. And so, during those long forgotten winters of old America, families gathered beside glowing fireplaces night after night, listening to crackling wood, while storms moved silently across the frozen land outside. How Americans survived before electricity. Narrate very slowly with a soft, sleepy tone. The storytelling should feel deeply immersive and peaceful, like a late-night winter documentary made for relaxation and sleep. Focus on darkness, candlelight, silence, old winter routines, emotional comfort, and the slow rhythm of life before electricity in early America. There was once a time in America when night truly became dark. Not the soft, artificial darkness of modern cities, filled with distant streetlights and glowing windows, but real darkness. The kind that arrived slowly across snowy fields and silent forests after sunset. The kind that swallowed entire towns beneath endless winter skis. Before electricity changed the world forever, winter nights in America felt longer than people today can easily imagine. The sun disappeared early during the cold months. By late afternoon, pale golden light faded behind frozen trees, while long shadows stretched across snowy roads and empty farm fields. And then darkness arrived. Quietly, slowly, completely. Inside small wooden homes, families prepared carefully for the long winter evening ahead. Candles were lit one by one beside icy windows. Oil lamps flickered softly against wooden walls, while fireplaces filled tiny rooms with orange light and drifting warmth. Outside, snow continued falling through the darkness. The world beyond the cabin became invisible. No glowing signs. No headlights. No electric windows shining across distant neighborhoods. Only moonlight reflecting across deep snow and frozen rivers beneath the silent winter sky. For many families, light itself became precious during those years. Candles cost money. Lamp oil needed saving. Nothing could be wasted carelessly during winter. Children learned early not to burn candles too quickly. Families reused candle stubs until almost nothing remained. Some homes stayed dim intentionally so supplies would last until spring finally returned. As night settled over villages and farms, people adjusted naturally to the slower rhythm of darkness. Without electricity, daily life followed the movement of the sun. Morning began early because daylight mattered, and evenings ended quietly. During winter nights, families gathered close together near fireplaces where heat and light combined into one small comforting space inside the home. Beyond that circle of firelight, rooms faded into shadow. The corners of cabins often remained dark, while wind whispered softly outside frozen walls. Snow pressed gently against rooftops, while chimney smoke drifted upward into the icy night air. Sometimes silence filled the room completely. Not uncomfortable silence. Peaceful silence. The kind created by snow-covered worlds, far away from noise and machines. A clock ticked softly somewhere near the fireplace. Wood crackled gently inside the flames. A rocking chair moved slowly back and forth. And outside, winter stretched endlessly across the sleeping countryside. People used those quiet evenings differently than today. Without television or endless entertainment, winter nights became deeply personal and calm. Some families spent hours sewing clothing by candlelight. Mothers repaired coats and blankets while children watched shadows flicker against the ceiling. Others carved wood beside the fire or sharpened farming tools for spring. Books became treasured companions during long winters. In homes fortunate enough to own them, old novels and family Bibles rested carefully beside candlelit tables. People read slowly during winter evenings, turning pages gently while storms moved across the darkness outside. The soft glow of a single candle illuminated entire worlds. Children often listened, while older family members read aloud beside the fire. Stories sounded different during winter nights. More emotional somehow. More alive. Every sound felt stronger in the darkness. Even small noises carried meaning. The creaking of frozen wood. The distant howl of winter wind. The slow drip of melting snow beside the hearth. Without electricity, people became deeply aware of natural sounds surrounding them. Storms felt larger. Forests felt deeper. Winter nights felt endless. Sometimes blizzards arrived suddenly after sunset and covered entire towns before morning came. Wind shook cabin walls while snow piled high against doors and fences. Travelers trapped outside during such storms faced terrible danger in the freezing darkness. Inside homes, families remained close beside the fire. Candles glowed softly through the night, while storms raged beyond the windows. Children occasionally woke from sleep to hear wind roaring outside, like distant ocean waves, moving across the frozen land. Yet even during harsh storms, there were moments of strange beauty. Moonlight often transformed snowy villages into silent silver worlds during calm winter nights. Frozen lakes reflected stars beneath pale skies, while chimney smoke drifted slowly upward through cold, still air. Everything appeared softer beneath snow. Slower. Quieter. In those years before electricity, winter encouraged people to rest more naturally. Darkness signaled the body to slow down. Families slept earlier during cold months because there was little reason to remain awake late into the night. And perhaps this slower life changed people emotionally too. Without constant distraction, winter evenings became moments for reflection. People talked longer beside the fire. They listened more carefully. They noticed things modern life often ignores. The sound of snow brushing against windows. The comfort of warm soup after cold labor. The peaceful feeling of sitting safely indoors while storms covered the world outside. Even loneliness felt different then. Isolated farms sometimes stood miles apart beneath endless winter landscapes. Snow blocked roads for days during severe storms, leaving families completely cut off from nearby towns. No phones connected them. No electric signals crossed the darkness. Only candlelight burned quietly inside tiny homes, surrounded by frozen silence. And yet people endured. Human beings adapted to winter darkness over generations. Communities grew stronger through shared hardship. Neighbors helped one another survive difficult seasons by sharing food, wood, blankets, and company during the coldest months. Winter taught patience. It taught gratitude. It taught people to treasure warmth, to treasure light, to treasure togetherness during long nights beneath frozen skis. Today, modern cities almost never become truly dark. Electric lights glow endlessly across roads, buildings, and homes. People remain awake deep into the night, surrounded by screens and noise and movement. But once, America slept beside candlelight. Snow drifted slowly through quiet villages, while fireplaces crackled softly inside wooden homes. Families rested beneath thick blankets, while frozen wind moved across empty fields and dark forests beneath the stars. And somewhere inside that darkness, life moved more slowly, more gently, more peacefully, as if winter itself asked the world to become quiet for a little while. The candles burned low beside frozen windows. The fire continued glowing softly. And outside the cabin, snow kept falling across the silent sleeping land. The forgotten winter foods. Narrate slowly, softly, and warmly. The storytelling should feel comforting and sleepy, like listening to a peaceful winter documentary beside a fireplace late at night. Focus heavily on old American winter food traditions, survival cooking, candlelit kitchens, soup, bread, preserved food, family warmth, and the emotional comfort of eating during harsh winters. During the long winters of old America, food became something far more important than simple hunger. It became warmth, comfort, hope, and survival itself. When snow covered the roads and icy wind swept across frozen fields, families understood that every meal mattered deeply during the cold months ahead. Winter changed the rhythm of eating completely. Fresh vegetables disappeared quickly after the first heavy snowfalls. Fruit trees stood empty beneath layers of ice, while gardens slept silently beneath frozen earth. Rivers hardened beneath thick sheets of winter ice, and distant markets often became impossible to reach during severe storms. So families prepared carefully long before winter arrived. Throughout autumn, homes across America filled with the quiet work of preservation. Women sliced apples into thin pieces and dried them slowly near sunlight or low fires. Herbs hung from wooden beams inside warm kitchens, while jars of preserved vegetables lined shelves beside candlelight. Potatoes were stored underground, where freezing temperatures could not reach them. Salted meat rested carefully inside barrels for the difficult months ahead. Nothing could be wasted. Every small piece of food carried value during winter. Inside tiny wooden homes, cooking became the emotional center of daily life once snow began falling outside. Most meals were prepared slowly over open fires or heavy iron stoves that warmed entire rooms while soup simmered quietly for hours. The smell of cooking drifted through cabins from morning until night. Warm bread, boiling potatoes, stew filled with onions and herbs. Simple foods, perhaps. But during winter, simple food felt deeply comforting, especially after long hours spent outside in freezing weather. Farmers often returned home, exhausted from caring for animals during snowstorms. Their boots carried snow into small kitchens, while cold air slipped briefly through cabin doors before closing again against the storm. And waiting for them near the fire was warmth, steam rising from soup bowls, fresh bread wrapped in cloth beside the stove, a kettle gently singing over the flames. Winter meals were rarely luxurious during those years. Many families survived on basic ingredients repeated day after day through the long cold season. But people learned to appreciate small comforts differently then. A warm meal during January could completely change the feeling inside a home. Soup became one of the most important foods of winter. Large iron pots often remained above fireplaces for hours, while ingredients cooked slowly together beside glowing embers. Potatoes softened beside carrots, onions, herbs, beans, and pieces of preserved meat, while steam filled tiny kitchens with rich, comforting scents. The sound of soup, gently bubbling beside a fire, became part of winter life itself. Families gathered close during mealtime because warmth stayed strongest near the hearth. Wooden bowls rested beside flickering candles, while snow drifted softly against frozen windows outside. The world beyond the cabin felt cold and distant. But inside, everything felt safe for a little while. Bread held special meaning during old American winters. Baking bread required patience, labor, and careful use of precious supplies. Flour had to last until spring. Firewood could not be wasted carelessly. Yet families still baked whenever possible because fresh bread brought emotional comfort unlike almost anything else during winter. The smell alone transformed the atmosphere of a home. Warm bread cooling beside candlelight, while snow fell outside, became one of the quiet pleasures people remembered for years afterward. Children often waited impatiently near kitchens while loaves baked slowly beside the fire. Butter melted gently across warm slices, while parents poured soup into waiting bowls nearby. In difficult times, even small meals created moments of happiness. Winter also changed the way families ate together. Because darkness arrived early before electricity, supper became an important evening ritual during the cold months. Families gathered while firelight flickered softly across wooden walls and wind moved gently outside through frozen trees. Meals were slower then, People talked quietly. Sometimes grandparents told stories about earlier winters, while children listened beside steaming bowls of stew. Other nights remained peaceful and silent, except for the crackling fire and soft sound of spoons against wooden dishes. The simplicity itself became beautiful. There were no glowing screens pulling attention away. No loud distractions. Only warmth. Only candlelight. Only the comforting feeling of sharing food together, while winter surrounded the home outside. Certain foods became strongly connected to emotional memory during those years. Hot cider warmed cold hands after snowy work outdoors. Roasted chestnuts crackled gently beside open flames. Cornbread filled kitchens with rich earthy smells during storms. Even plain potatoes tasted extraordinary after hours spent in freezing wind. Perhaps hardship changes the way people experience comfort. Because during old winters, warmth and food became deeply connected inside the human heart. Children especially remembered winter kitchens vividly. Many later described the peaceful sound of mothers cooking beside the fire while storms covered the world outside. The glowing light from lanterns reflected softly across kitchen walls, while snow drifted endlessly through the darkness beyond frozen windows. Those memories stayed alive long after the winters themselves disappeared. For poorer families, however, winter food could become frighteningly scarce before spring arrived. Some homes ran dangerously low on flour, meat, or firewood during especially harsh seasons. Blizzards sometimes blocked roads for weeks, making travel impossible and delaying supplies to isolated towns. Communities survived by helping one another. Neighbors shared bread, shared soup, shared whatever little they could spare. Winter reminded people that survival often depended upon kindness. And despite all the hardship, many old Americans still remembered winter meals with surprising affection later in life. Not because life was easier then. It was far harder. But perhaps because people appreciated small comforts more deeply. A warm kitchen, a glowing fire, fresh bread cooling slowly beside candlelight, the sound of soup simmering while snow falls quietly outside. These ordinary moments became treasures during long winters. Even today, many traditional American winter foods still carry echoes of those early years. Stews, roasted vegetables, hot cider, fresh baked bread. Simple, comforting meals designed not only to feed the body, but to comfort the spirit during cold, dark nights. And so, while winter storms moved slowly across frozen towns and icy forests beneath gray skis, families gathered once more around warm kitchens glowing softly in the darkness. The fire crackled gently. Steam rose from heavy bowls. Candles flickered beside frosted windows. And outside, snow continued falling silently across old America. Children and snowy winter games. Narrate very slowly with a soft, nostalgic, sleepy tone. The storytelling should feel peaceful and emotionally warm, like remembering childhood during a quiet winter night beside a fireplace. Focus on children playing in snow, simple handmade toys, sledding, laughter in frozen villages, candlelit evenings, family warmth, and the innocence of winter childhood in old America. During the long winters of old America, children experienced snow differently than adults. For parents, winter often meant hard work, survival, and worry. But for children, winter could still feel magical. The first snowfall of the season always changed everything. Children woke early and hurried toward frosted windows, while pale morning light slowly brightened the snowy world outside. Overnight, roads disappeared beneath thick white blankets. Trees stood silent and beautiful beneath fresh snow, while chimney smoke drifted softly into the cold winter sky. To adults, it meant another difficult season had begun. But to children, it felt like the world itself had transformed overnight into something mysterious and wonderful. Entire villages became quieter after heavy snow. The usual sounds of wagons and horses softened beneath thick drifts, while frozen wind moved gently across empty streets. Smoke curled upward from wooden homes where fireplaces glowed warmly against the cold. And outside those homes, children played. For hours. Sometimes until sunset painted the snow in pale gold and blue shadows. Long before television, phones, or electric entertainment, children created their own winter adventures using whatever surrounded them. Snow became their playground. Their imagination filled the frozen world with life. Simple wooden sleds carried children racing down icy hills outside small American towns. Their laughter echoed across snowy fields while boots kicked powder into the cold air. Scarves flew behind them in the wind as they slid quickly through the winter landscape beneath pale gray skis. Many sleds were handmade by fathers or older brothers, using rough pieces of wood, carefully shaped during quiet evenings beside the fireplace. Nothing was perfect, but children loved them anyway. Some villages had steep hills where groups of children gathered after chores were finished. The sound of sled runners scraping ice mixed with excited voices and soft winter wind moving through nearby trees. Faces turned red from the cold. Gloves became wet with snow. And still, they continued playing happily beneath the falling snowflakes. Snowball fights became legendary during those winters. Children hid behind fences, snowbanks, and frozen barrels while laughter filled the icy air. Tiny boots rushed across deep drifts while soft snow exploded harmlessly against coats and scarves. Even the cold itself could not stop them. Because childhood often finds joy where adults see hardship. Snow forts appeared beside cabins and barns after heavy storms. Children spent hours building walls from packed snow while pretending they lived inside frozen castles or hidden mountain forts deep in the wilderness. The quiet imagination of winter transformed ordinary villages into endless adventures. Some children wandered frozen ponds carefully, while adults warned them about thin ice beneath fresh snow. Others made snow angels beneath falling flakes, while distant church bells echoed softly through the cold afternoon air. The world felt slower then, safer in certain ways. Winter days stretched peacefully beneath pale skis, while smoke rose gently from chimney tops across the snowy countryside. Inside homes, children often created toys from simple materials during storms too dangerous for outdoor play. Corn husks became dolls. Wood scraps became tiny animals or toy soldiers. Pieces of cloth turned into handmade treasures passed between brothers and sisters during long winter evenings. Nothing expensive, nothing complicated. Yet these small objects often became deeply loved because they were made with care. Candles glowed softly, while children sat near fireplaces carving shapes into wood or listening to stories told by grandparents beside crackling fires. Outside, blizzards moved across the darkness. Inside, warmth surrounded the room. Winter evenings held a different kind of magic for children during those years. After hours spent outdoors playing in deep snow, boots lined the floor beside the fire, while gloves and scarves dried slowly in the rising warmth. Faces still glowed pink from the cold, while soup simmered quietly nearby. Parents wrapped blankets around sleepy children resting close to the hearth. The sound of wind outside mixed gently with soft conversation and crackling firewood. And slowly, the excitement of the day faded into peaceful exhaustion. Many children fell asleep quickly during winter. The cold air and constant outdoor movement left them deeply tired by evening. Some drifted to sleep listening to storms outside, while candlelight flickered softly across cabin ceilings. Snow continued falling quietly beyond frozen windows. And somewhere in the darkness outside, forests stood silent beneath moonlit skies. For children growing up during old American winters, nature felt close and alive in everyday life. They watched animal tracks appear across fresh snow each morning. Foxes, rabbits, deer moving silently through frozen fields. Children learned to recognize the sounds of changing weather too. They noticed when the wind became sharper before a storm, or when unusual silence settled across the land before heavy snowfall arrived. Winter taught observation, patience, imagination. But childhood during those years was not always easy. Many children still worked hard despite the season. Boys helped chop firewood or feed animals during freezing mornings, while girls often carried water, repaired clothing, or assisted with cooking beside smoky fireplaces. Life demanded responsibility early. Yet moments of joy still existed everywhere between the hardships, especially during winter holidays. Christmas brought rare excitement into snowy homes illuminated by candlelight and pine branches. Small handmade gifts appeared beside fireplaces, while children listened carefully for stories about St. Nicholas traveling silently through the snowy night. Even tiny presents felt magical then. An orange, a carved toy, a warm scarf sewn by hand. Simple things became unforgettable memories. And perhaps that is why old winter childhoods continue feeling nostalgic even today. Because they remind people of a slower kind of happiness. The happiness of laughter echoing across snowy hills. The comfort of warm fires after cold play outdoors. The excitement of waking to fresh snowfall covering the world in silence. Modern childhood often moves quickly beneath glowing screens and endless noise. But once, children found entire worlds hidden inside winter snow. Entire adventures inside quiet forests and frozen fields. Entire evenings of comfort beside fireplaces glowing softly against the darkness. And while adults worried about survival through another harsh winter, children still looked outside at falling snow with wonder in their eyes. The storm outside became beautiful to them. The cold air became exciting. The frozen world became magical. And so, across old America, beneath gray winter skis and drifting chimney smoke, children continued laughing and playing through the snow, while the long winter slowly covered the land in white silence. The lonely sound of winter trains. Narrate very slowly and gently. The tone should feel sleepy, emotional, and deeply atmospheric. Focus on winter train travel in old America, snowy landscapes, steam engines, lonely stations, quiet passengers, darkness, isolation, and the peaceful sadness of long winter journeys. During the winter months of old America, few sounds carried farther through the frozen night than the whistle of a distant train. Long before airplanes crossed the skis and highways connected cities with endless streams of headlights, trains became the great lifelines of the American winter. They moved slowly across snowy mountains, frozen plains, silent forests, and isolated towns buried beneath deep drifts of snow. And during cold winter nights, their lonely whistles echoed across the darkness like voices traveling through another world. For many people living in remote towns, the arrival of a train meant connection to the outside world. It brought letters, food, news, supplies, and sometimes loved ones returning home through the snow. Winter railroads were never easy places. Snowstorms constantly threatened the tracks during the cold months. Ice gathered along steel rails while freezing winds swept across open landscapes with terrifying strength. Entire train lines disappeared beneath heavy snow after severe blizzards rolled across the country. Still, the trains continued moving whenever they could. Slowly, carefully, relentlessly. Steam engines looked almost alive during winter. Huge clouds of white steam poured upward into the icy air, while black iron wheels pushed through snow-covered tracks, stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Sparks floated briefly into the darkness from glowing furnaces deep inside the locomotive, while the engine groaned heavily against the frozen land. At night, trains became moving islands of warmth and light, surrounded by endless winter darkness. Passengers often sat quietly beside frosted windows, while pale moonlight reflected across snowy fields outside. The soft rhythm of metal wheels against frozen tracks filled the cars hour after hour as America drifted silently past in the darkness. Winter train travel felt strangely peaceful to many people. The steady rocking of the cars, the low distant whistle, the warmth inside compared to the freezing world beyond the windows. All of it created a sleepy atmosphere unlike anything else. Some passengers wrapped themselves in heavy blankets while reading beneath dim oil lamps. Others simply stared outside at the endless white landscape rolling silently past beneath gray skis. Forests covered in snow. Frozen rivers glowing beneath moonlight. Lonely farmhouses with candlelight flickering behind icy windows. The train moved through all of it slowly, like a quiet observer traveling across a sleeping winter world. Inside the locomotives themselves, workers endured brutal conditions during the coldest months. Engineers and firemen spent long hours feeding coal into roaring furnaces, while icy wind whipped across the front of the train. Snow covered their coats and froze against gloves, while steam drifted constantly around them through the freezing darkness. Their work demanded endurance. One mistake on icy tracks during winter could become deadly. Yet these workers kept the trains moving through storms that often seemed impossible to survive. Sometimes snow became so deep that railroad crews needed massive plows attached to locomotives just to clear the tracks ahead. Huge walls of snow rose beside the train, while workers battled freezing wind for hours beneath gray skis. Entire towns waited anxiously for these trains during harsh winters. Without them, supplies could disappear quickly. Coal, food, medicine, mail from distant family members. Everything depended upon the railroads continuing through the storm. Small train stations became emotional places during winter, especially at night. Lanterns glowed softly beside snowy platforms, while station workers stamped frozen boots against wooden floors to stay warm. Wind pushed loose snow across empty tracks, while travelers waited quietly beneath heavy coats and scarves. Sometimes only one train arrived each day during severe weather. Sometimes none at all. Passengers sat silently, inside dim waiting rooms, listening for the distant whistle echoing through the storm. And when the train finally appeared through the falling snow, it felt almost magical. Its glowing headlight cut through the darkness while steam rolled across the frozen station platform. Doors opened slowly, releasing warmth into the icy night air while tired travelers stepped carefully onto snow-covered ground. For families separated by distance, winter train arrivals carried deep emotion. Parents waited anxiously for sons returning from work in distant cities. Children pressed faces against station, windows hopping to see relatives arriving for Christmas. Lovers reunited briefly, beneath drifting snow and glowing lantern light, before trains disappeared once more into the darkness. The railroads carried countless human stories quietly across America every winter. Stories of loneliness, hope, travel, separation, and return. Some journeys lasted days, through endless snow-covered landscapes. Passengers slept uneasily inside moving train cars, while storms covered mountains and plains outside. At night, the sound of wind against the train mixed softly with the steady rhythm of the wheels below. Many people remembered those journeys for the rest of their lives. The strange, peaceful isolation, the endless winter scenery, the feeling of moving slowly through darkness, while warm light glowed softly inside the train. There was something deeply emotional about winter travel in those years. Perhaps because the world outside felt so large and cold and silent, and the train itself felt small and human against it all. Even now, old winter trains remain strongly connected to nostalgia in the American imagination. Steam rising into snowy skis, whistles echoing through frozen valleys, lanterns glowing beside lonely rural stations at night. These images still carry a quiet beauty from another time. A slower time, a quieter time, a time when travel itself felt meaningful because distance and weather made every journey uncertain. And so, through the long winters of old America, the trains continued moving across the frozen land, across mountains buried in snow, across dark forests beneath moonlit skies, across lonely towns where people waited patiently beside glowing station windows. The engines groaned softly through the storm. Steam drifted upward into the cold night air. Passengers rested quietly beneath blankets, while the tracks carried them deeper into the sleeping winter darkness. And somewhere far ahead, another whistle echoed gently through the snow-covered night. The candlelit Christmas traditions. Narrate slowly, softly, and warmly. The tone should feel deeply nostalgic, peaceful, emotional, and comforting, like a quiet Christmas memory from long ago. Focus on candlelit homes, snowy villages, handmade decorations, family warmth, old American Christmas traditions, silence, fireplaces, winter nights, and the emotional beauty of simple celebrations before modern technology. During the long winters of old America, Christmas arrived quietly. There were no glowing electric decorations stretched across rooftops. No loud shopping centers filled with music and bright lights. No televisions flashing endlessly through the night. Instead, Christmas entered slowly through falling snow, candlelight, pine branches, and the soft warmth of family gathered close together inside small wooden homes. In many towns, winter already covered everything deeply by December. Snow rested heavily upon rooftops and fences, while frozen wind moved gently across silent roads beneath gray skis. Chimney smoke curled upward into the cold air from cabins glowing softly against the darkness of early evening. And inside those homes, families prepared carefully for Christmas. The season felt different then. Quieter, slower, more personal somehow. Decorations were often handmade with whatever materials families could gather during winter. Children helped string dried fruit together beside candlelight, while mothers tied ribbons carefully around pine branches collected from nearby forests. The smell of evergreen filled tiny homes during those days. Fresh pine needles rested above fireplaces and around wooden doors, while candles flickered softly against frosted windows. Simple ornaments became treasured family possessions. Small carved wooden animals, paper stars folded by hand, tiny cloth dolls stitched carefully during long winter evenings. Nothing expensive, nothing perfect. Yet every decoration carried warmth because it had been made slowly with love beside the fire. Christmas trees themselves looked very different during those years. Many were small enough to fit comfortably inside modest homes warmed by fireplaces and lanterns. Families decorated the branches carefully using ribbons, berries, nuts, popcorn strings, and tiny candles clipped gently onto the tree itself. Those candles transformed winter evenings into something magical. The soft golden light shimmered across dark green branches, while snow drifted quietly beyond the windows outside. Shadows moved slowly across wooden walls, while children sat silently staring at the glowing tree in wonder. The danger of fire always remained real during candlelit Christmases. Families watched carefully while candles burned. Still, people continued the tradition because the beauty felt unforgettable. The warm, flickering light against the darkness of winter created a feeling difficult to describe even today. A feeling of peace, of hope, of warmth during the coldest season. Christmas meals carried special meaning during long American winters too. Food was often simple compared to modern celebrations, yet families prepared carefully for weeks whenever possible. Bread baked slowly beside glowing fires, while soups and roasted meats filled homes with comforting smells during snowy evenings. For many poorer families, Christmas dinner became one of the rare occasions when everyone ate especially well during winter. Children waited excitedly for pies cooling beside kitchen windows. Apple pie, pumpkin pie, molasses cookies made from treasured ingredients, saved carefully for the holiday season. The smells drifting through those warm kitchens mixed with pine branches, candle smoke, and crackling firewood while snow continued falling softly outside. In small villages, churches became important centers of Christmas life. On Christmas Eve, families wrapped themselves in heavy coats and scarves before walking slowly through snowy streets toward candlelit churches glowing softly in the darkness. Boots crunched gently across frozen snow, while church bells echoed through the cold winter air. Inside, warmth and candlelight welcomed tired travelers from the storm. Voices rose softly together in hymns, while snow pressed silently against stained glass windows. The peaceful sound of singing filled old wooden churches, illuminated only by lanterns and candles flickering gently against the walls. For many Americans during those years, Christmas carried deep spiritual comfort during the harshness of winter. The holiday reminded people that warmth and kindness could survive even during the coldest nights of the year. Children especially remembered Christmas mornings vividly. They often woke before sunrise and hurried toward fireplaces or small decorated trees, while darkness still covered the snowy world outside. The gifts waiting for them were usually simple. A handmade toy, a warm scarf knitted carefully by a grandmother, a carved wooden horse, an orange brought from far away, rare and precious during winter. Yet these small presents often became unforgettable memories because they were given with care. Children played quietly beside the fire while parents prepared breakfast nearby. Candles burned softly against frosted windows, while snow continued drifting down outside the cabin in perfect silence. The world felt peaceful during those moments, almost timeless. Winter storms sometimes made Christmas difficult during old American years. Heavy snow blocked roads between towns, while freezing temperatures trapped families indoors for days at a time. Travelers occasionally missed holidays completely because trains or wagons could not move through the storm. Yet strangely, the isolation often made Christmas feel even more intimate. Families gathered closer together beside the fire, while wind shook the cabin walls outside. Stories filled the evening while warm food rested beside glowing candles and softly falling snow. Modern Christmas often feels loud and fast, but old American Christmases moved slowly. People appreciated small joys more deeply then. The warmth of the fire, the smell of fresh bread, the glow of candles against winter darkness, the quiet happiness of simply being together while snow covered the world outside. Even after the holiday itself ended, many homes kept pine branches hanging near fireplaces for weeks while winter continued across the countryside. The scent of evergreen mixed gently with wood smoke and cold air drifting through small cracks in cabin walls. And slowly, Christmas faded back into the long, peaceful silence of winter. But the memories remained. The candlelight, the snowfall, the soft voices beside the fire, the quiet beauty of old traditions carried gently through generations. Even today, many people still search for that feeling during Christmas. Not wealth, not noise, not endless distraction, but warmth, stillness, togetherness, the simple comfort of light glowing softly during the darkest season of the year. And so, across old America, beneath snowy rooftops and frozen skis, families celebrated Christmas quietly beside crackling fireplaces, while candlelight flickered gently through the winter darkness. Outside, snow continued falling across silent villages and sleeping forests. Inside, warmth filled the room. And for one peaceful winter night, the cold world outside felt very far away. The slow life of winter evenings. Narrate very slowly with a peaceful, sleepy, emotional tone. The storytelling should feel deeply calming, like sitting beside a fireplace late at night while snow falls quietly outside. Focus on silence, candlelight, slow winter evenings, family routines, quiet reflection, old American homes, soft sounds, emotional warmth, and the peaceful rhythm of life before modern distractions. During the long winters of old America, evenings moved slowly, far more slowly than modern life allows today. Once the sun disappeared behind snowy forests and frozen hills, the world seemed to pause beneath the quiet weight of winter darkness. There were no glowing screens, filling rooms with endless movement. No traffic rushing endlessly through the night. No buzzing phones or bright electric signs breaking the silence. Only firelight. Only candlelight. Only the soft sounds of winter, surrounding small wooden homes across the sleeping countryside. By late afternoon during the coldest months, darkness already began settling over villages and isolated farms. Pale golden sunlight faded slowly across snowy fields, while smoke drifted upward from chimneys into the freezing evening air. Families finished their outdoor work quickly before night fully arrived. Animals were fed. Water carried indoors before freezing. Firewood stacked carefully beside the hearth. And one by one, warm lights appeared softly behind frosted windows across the winter landscape. Inside the home, evening routines unfolded gently. Coats hung beside doors still dusted with snow. Boots dried slowly near glowing fireplaces. Soup simmered quietly above the fire, while candle flames flickered against wooden walls, darkened by years of smoke and winter shadows. Everything felt slower then. People did not rush through evenings. There was nowhere urgent to go once darkness settled across the frozen roads outside. Winter encouraged stillness. And slowly, families adjusted themselves to its rhythm. The fireplace became the center of nearly every evening. Its warmth pulled people together naturally, while wind whispered softly outside through icy trees and snow-covered fields. Chairs gathered close to the hearth, while thick blankets wrapped around tired shoulders after long, cold days. Children often rested sleepily near the fire, while parents completed small tasks by candlelight. Some repaired clothing carefully, using needle and thread. Others carved wooden tools slowly, while the clock ticked gently nearby. Grandparents rocked quietly in worn chairs beside glowing embers, while storms moved silently across the darkness outside. And often, no one spoke for long periods of time. Yet the silence never felt empty. It felt peaceful, comfortable, like winter itself, asking the world to become quiet for a little while. The sounds inside old homes became especially noticeable during these evenings. The crackling of burning wood, the soft creak of floorboards, the faint whistle of wind against frozen windows, the steady ticking of clocks counting slowly through the night. Modern life rarely notices such small sounds anymore. But during old American winters, those sounds filled entire evenings. Some families read books together beneath weak candlelight while snow drifted gently outside. Pages turned slowly while children listened sleepily to stories about distant places, old adventures, or passages from family Bibles resting carefully beside the fire. Others wrote letters during winter evenings. Ink moved quietly across paper while lanterns glowed softly nearby. Families often stayed separated by great distances during those years, and winter letters carried emotional importance impossible to replace. A letter arriving during January could brighten an entire household. Some evenings included music. Simple music. A violin played softly near the hearth. A quiet hymn sung together during snowfall. The low, gentle sound of someone humming while preparing tea beside the stove. Music sounded different during winter nights. Softer somehow. More emotional beneath the warmth of candlelight and drifting snow. Outside, the world remained deeply still. Snow absorbed nearly every sound across the landscape. Roads disappeared beneath pale moonlight, while frozen forests stood silent beneath heavy branches of ice and snow. Occasionally, a distant horse passed slowly through the village. Or church bells echoed faintly through the cold air, before fading once more into silence. Winter evenings also became moments for reflection. Without constant entertainment or endless distraction, people spent more time simply thinking. Watching the fire. Listening to the wind. Remembering old summers while snow covered the earth outside. Perhaps that is why so many memories from old winters feel emotional even now. Because people experienced life more slowly then. They noticed things modern life often ignores. the warmth of tea between cold hands, the glow of lantern light against snow-covered windows, the comfort of hearing family voices softly nearby during storms. Children especially loved the peaceful feeling of winter evenings. After long afternoons spent sledding or playing in snow, exhaustion arrived naturally once darkness filled the room. Wet gloves dried beside the fire while sleepy eyes watched shadows flicker softly across cabin ceilings. Many children fell asleep listening to stories told quietly beside the hearth. Others drifted into dreams, while wind brushed gently against the roof overhead. And outside, snow continued falling endlessly across old America. Winter nights often felt endless during those years. Darkness lasted nearly 15 hours during the coldest months. Families slept longer because little existed beyond the warmth of the home after midnight. The frozen world outside seemed paused beneath moonlit skies and drifting snow. Yet inside the home, life remained warm and gentle. Some parents stayed awake late after children fell asleep, sitting quietly beside low fires while the final candles burned slowly toward darkness. These late hours carried a deep stillness impossible to describe fully. Only glowing embers remained. Only the soft breathing of sleeping family members nearby. Only snow moving silently beyond frozen windows. The world felt far away during those moments. And perhaps that feeling itself became one of winter's greatest gifts. Not comfort alone, not warmth alone, but stillness. A rare peaceful stillness modern life has almost forgotten. Even today, many people continue searching for that same feeling during winter nights. The feeling of slowing down, of resting safely indoors while cold wind moves gently outside. The feeling of warm light glowing softly against darkness while the world becomes quiet for a little while. And so, throughout the long winters of old America, evenings continued unfolding slowly beside fireplaces and candlelight. Families gathered close together, while storms crossed frozen fields beneath the stars. Clocks ticked softly through warm rooms. Tea steamed beside glowing embers. Snow covered the silent roads outside. And somewhere deep within those quiet winter nights, life moved peacefully at the speed of falling snow. The old winter superstitions. Narrate very slowly and softly, with a mysterious but calming tone. The storytelling should feel cozy, sleepy, and atmospheric, like hearing old winter legends beside a fireplace late at night during a snowstorm. Focus on old American winter superstitions: candlelight, snowy forests, silence, fear of storms, mysterious winter sounds, folklore, emotional comfort, and the imagination people carried during long winters before modern science and electricity. During the long winters of old America, people believed the cold season carried mysteries hidden deep within the snow and darkness. Winter felt powerful during those years, almost alive somehow. The endless nights, the frozen forests, the strange silence that arrived before storms. All of it filled the imagination with stories, fears, and quiet superstitions passed gently from one generation to the next. Long before electricity illuminated every road and window, darkness itself felt mysterious to many people, especially during winter. Snow covered the countryside so completely that familiar places transformed into something strange beneath moonlight. Forests became endless black shadows, stretching beyond frozen fields, while icy wind moved softly through bare branches like distant whispers. And during those silent nights, people often imagined things hidden within the storm. Inside warm cabins glowing beside candlelight, grandparents told old stories while children listened carefully beneath heavy blankets. The crackling fire mixed softly with the sound of wind outside, while snow brushed gently against frozen windows. Some stories were comforting. Others carried warnings. Many Americans believed winter nights could reveal signs from nature itself. A sudden silence in the forest before snowfall meant a storm was approaching. A strange wind moving across the chimney after midnight sometimes meant terrible weather before morning. Owls calling near homes during deep winter nights were believed by some families to carry messages from the unseen world. People watched the winter sky carefully during those years. The moon, surrounded by pale rings, often warned of coming snowstorms. Sudden changes in animal behavior made farmers uneasy. Horses became restless before blizzards, while dogs barked nervously into the darkness for reasons no one fully understood. Nature itself seemed mysterious during winter. And because science could not explain everything yet, imagination quietly filled the silence. Candles held special meaning during many old winter traditions. Some families believed a candle left burning beside the window protected the home during severe storms. Others avoided blowing candles out suddenly late at night because they feared inviting bad luck into the house during winter. Fire itself became symbolic during the cold season. Warmth meant life. Light meant safety. Darkness beyond the firelight felt unknown. During blizzards, isolated cabins often stood completely alone beneath endless snow and freezing wind. Families listened to storms shaking wooden walls, while candle flames flickered weakly beside frosted windows. Outside, nothing could be seen. Only darkness and snow, moving endlessly across the frozen land. Under such conditions, even ordinary sounds became frightening sometimes. The creaking of trees heavy with ice. Footsteps imagined beyond the door. The low moaning sound of wind crossing frozen fields after midnight. Children often asked nervous questions during storms, while older family members reassured them softly beside the fire. Yet even adults sometimes felt uneasy during the deepest winter nights, especially in isolated places far from nearby towns. The forests of old America carried countless winter legends. Travelers spoke about strange lights seen moving between snowy trees during blizzards. Some believed spirits wandered frozen roads, searching for shelter during severe storms. Others warned children never to whistle outside after dark during winter, because it might call bad weather closer to the home. These stories varied from town to town, family to family, but nearly all of them shared one thing in common. Winter itself became part of the mystery. Snow changed the world so completely that ordinary places no longer felt familiar. Frozen lakes disappeared beneath white drifts, while moonlight transformed forests into silent silver landscapes, stretching endlessly through the darkness. Even simple journeys became unsettling during severe weather. Many travelers carried lanterns carefully while crossing snowy roads at night, because storms could erase familiar paths within minutes. Losing sight of home during winter darkness terrified people deeply during those years. Some old Americans believed hearing unusual sounds outside during blizzards meant wandering spirits searched for warmth. Others believed certain dreams, arriving during winter storms, carried hidden warnings about the future. And children listened to all of it with wide eyes beside glowing fires, while snow continued falling softly beyond the windows. Despite these fears, winter superstitions often brought comfort too. People created rituals to feel safer during the season's uncertainty. Some families hung evergreen branches above doors to protect homes from bad luck during winter. Others kept small lanterns burning through the night during storms because the soft glow eased loneliness and fear. Simple traditions helped people feel connected during difficult months filled with darkness and isolation. Perhaps that is why these stories survived so long. Not because people were foolish, but because winter, naturally, awakens imagination inside the human mind. Silence becomes deeper during snowfall. Darkness feels larger during cold nights. And the unknown begins quietly growing inside empty forests and frozen roads beneath the moonlight. Children especially remembered these winter stories for the rest of their lives. The feeling of listening to grandparents speak softly beside the fireplace while storms moved outside through the darkness. The glow of candles flickering against wooden walls. The nervous excitement of hearing wind rattle frozen windows after midnight. These moments became unforgettable memories carried far into adulthood. Even today, modern people still feel something mysterious during heavy snowfall. The world becomes quieter, slower, almost dreamlike. Snow hides familiar roads and softens every sound until ordinary places suddenly feel distant and strange beneath winter skis. Perhaps a small part of those old superstitions still survives quietly inside us. Not because we truly fear spirits in the snow, but because winter reminds human beings how small they are against nature's silence and darkness. And so, throughout the long, cold winters of old America, families gathered close beside candlelight while storms crossed the frozen countryside outside. Fireplaces crackled softly. Lanterns glowed against the night. Children listened carefully to old stories whispered through generations. And beyond the warm safety of the cabin walls, snow drifted endlessly through the mysterious winter darkness. The first signs of spring. Narrate very slowly and gently with a peaceful, emotional, hopeful tone. The storytelling should feel calm and sleepy, like the final quiet moments of winter slowly fading into spring. Focus on melting snow, returning birds, warm sunlight, emotional relief after long winters, quiet villages awakening again, nature returning to life, and the peaceful beauty of seasonal change in old America. After the long, frozen months of winter, spring did not arrive all at once in old America. It arrived slowly, quietly, almost carefully. At first, many people barely noticed the changes beginning around them. The snow still covered the roads. The wind still carried cold across the frozen fields. The forests remained silent beneath pale gray skis. And yet, something in the air had begun to shift. Winter was loosening its grip on the land. During the coldest months, it often felt as though winter might last forever. Endless nights beside the fire, storms covering villages in silence, frozen rivers sleeping beneath thick ice. The season seemed permanent, while families waited patiently for warmth to return. But eventually, after weeks of darkness and snow, tiny signs of spring began appearing quietly across the countryside. The sunlight changed first. Morning light slowly grew warmer and brighter against cabin windows. Even during cold days, golden sunlight lingered longer across snowy fields and frozen fences before evening darkness arrived. People noticed it immediately. Without electricity or modern distractions, families remained deeply connected to the rhythms of nature during those years. They watched the sky carefully. They noticed the changing sound of wind. They felt the season turning long before calendars announced it officially. Snow still covered the ground deeply in many places, but small changes appeared everywhere beneath the surface. Icicles hanging from rooftops began dripping softly during warmer afternoons. Tiny streams of melted snow water moved quietly beside roads still buried beneath ice. And sometimes, for the first time in months, birdsong returned. The sound felt almost unbelievable after the endless silence of winter. A single bird resting on a fence post near sunrise. Another flying above frozen fields beneath pale blue skies. Children often heard the birds before adults did. They rushed excitedly to windows or cabin doors while cold air drifted softly inside. The world was waking up again. Slowly, patiently, the forest changed next. Heavy snow began falling from pine branches during warmer afternoons, while hidden animal tracks reappeared along muddy paths beneath melting drifts. Deer wandered carefully through patches of exposed grass, searching for the first signs of fresh growth after the long, difficult winter. Even the wind sounded different. Less sharp, less cruel. Still cold, but softer somehow. For families who had endured especially harsh winters, these early signs of spring carried deep emotional meaning. Relief slowly entered homes where supplies had grown dangerously low during the coldest months. Firewood stacks no longer disappeared as quickly. Frozen roads slowly reopened between isolated towns, while trains began traveling more reliably once storms weakened. Life started moving again. Inside homes, windows opened carefully for the first time in months. Fresh air drifted slowly through cabins still scented with wood smoke, candle wax, and long winter evenings beside the fire. Blankets were carried outdoors beneath pale sunlight, while melted snow dripped steadily from rooftops overhead. The silence of winter slowly broke apart. Water moved again beneath thinning river ice. Wagons returned cautiously to muddy roads. Church bells sounded brighter somehow through the warming air. And everywhere, people stepped outside longer each day simply to feel sunlight against their faces, after months spent sheltering from storms and freezing wind. Children especially celebrated the arrival of spring. The deep snow that once covered entire villages began shrinking slowly beneath warmer skis. Sleds rested forgotten beside barns, while muddy boots replaced thick winter footwear. Children explored streams formed by melting ice and searched eagerly for the first flowers pushing gently through frozen earth. To them, spring felt exciting. But to adults, it felt comforting. Winter had demanded endurance once again. And somehow, they had survived it together. Farmers began preparing quietly for another growing season. Frozen fields softened beneath sunlight, while horses returned to work along muddy roads stretching through the countryside. The land itself seemed to breathe again after months of stillness. At sunset, the villages looked different too. Winter skis often carried pale silver and gray tones above endless snow. But spring sunsets slowly returned with warmer colors spreading softly across the horizon. Gold, orange, and pink, reflected across melting rivers and wet roads beneath drifting evening clouds. Even nighttime changed. The darkness no longer felt endless. Fires still burned inside homes during chilly evenings, but families sensed warmth returning gradually beyond the walls. Windows remained open slightly longer, while candlelight flickered gently beside soft spring rain, replacing winter storms. The world sounded alive again. Frogs near rivers, birds resting in trees, water dripping from rooftops through the quiet evening air. And perhaps because winter had lasted so long, people appreciated spring more deeply during those years. Modern life often moves too quickly to notice seasonal change fully. But old America depended upon it completely. Spring meant survival, new food, travel, warmth, movement, hope. It meant the long darkness had finally passed. The old winter traditions slowly faded with the snow. Heavy blankets disappeared into storage. Children stopped gathering around the fire every evening. Lanterns burned less often as daylight stretched later into the night. And gradually, the peaceful stillness of winter gave way to the busy sounds of spring life returning across the countryside. Yet even as the snow melted away, memories of winter remained. The quiet evenings beside candlelight, the storms crossing frozen roads, the warmth of soup beside glowing fires, the peaceful silence of snowfall during long dark nights. Winter had changed the land once again. And now spring was gently carrying the world forward, one drop of melting snow at a time. And so, throughout old America, rivers awakened beneath the sunlight, while birds returned to silent forests and villages opened their doors once more to the warming air. Snow melted slowly from rooftops. Mud replaced ice along empty roads. The cold season finally loosened its hold on the sleeping land. And after months of darkness and snow, the first soft breath of spring moved quietly across America once again.